I'm here today with Edda Nicholson, who did her doctorate with the university and is now a member of staff. You're a lecturer in the business school, aren't you, Edda? And before we go into this conversation, I'd really like to congratulate Edda on a fantastic result for her Viva Voce, which was a recent thing. So many congratulations.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you in your cap and gown walking across the stage to receive your doctorate. We're all very proud of you. Well done.
Thank you.
So, Edda, you're originally from Iceland, aren't you?
That's right, yes. I was born there. My mum is Icelandic and my dad was Scottish, but he lived there all of his adult life.
And in Iceland, there's some wonderful traditions around the Christmas period. So I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about the run up to Christmas and how that's celebrated in Iceland.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Christmas is probably the best time of year to be in Iceland. And I remember it really fondly when I used to go back, and visit my family and things like that. So I think for me, and especially as a child growing up and visiting Iceland, the most memorable Christmas tradition that we had was definitely the Icelandic Santa Clauses. So we don't just have one. That's not enough for us. We have to have 12. And wow. Traditionally, they're actually trolls. They're not really Santa Clauses. And I think perhaps the advent of Coca-Cola and the Red Santa kind of took over a little bit. But they are what we call them the Yule Lads. And they are actually the sons of a really nasty troll called, what's her name? I've forgotten her name. Grilla, that's it. I knew that. I'm losing all my Icelandic vocabulary. So her name is Grilla. And she's actually a very sort of kind of Icelandic bogeyman kind of character, because if you're misbehaving, your mum would say, oh, be careful because Grilla will come and get you, or something like that. So she's kind of like the real kind of scary element of growing up in Iceland. But her sons were very different. They didn't like this kind of nastiness to children as they were growing up, and they really didn't like their mother because obviously she didn't treat them very well either, and all the folk tales that we have. So they started to come down from their home in the hills, and they used to visit the little villages, and they used to want to play with the children, but obviously they were scary trolls, so no one would play with them. And they started to leave little presents on windowsills because they wanted to sort of connect with the children, and that's how the story sort of starts. So the story has kind of evolved over time, and now a different one comes for each night of the 12 nights before Christmas and leaves little toys. So Icelandic children will put a shoe in the window. So it's not a stocking as such, but just a normal shoe or a slipper. And there'll be a little present waiting for them. But there's all sorts of stories and personalities around them. So one of them is called Bowl Licker. So he's supposed to come and steal some of your dinner if you don't clear up properly. Another one is called Door Slammer. He's loud, obviously. The weirdest one is Sheep Warrior, which I think he's supposed to sort of like run in and play with all the sheep in the farmyard. So not sure what the modern context is going to evolve with that one, but yeah, and Candle Stealer as well. So they've all got their little stories and little personalities, and the kids really look forward to hearing which one is coming. They'll read stories about them. Oh, it's his turn tonight, and that kind of thing. So it's a really lovely run up to Christmas.
That sounds really exciting. I quite like the idea of getting presents on the 12 days before Christmas. Definitely. So how do you actually celebrate Christmas itself?
Well, again, we like to start a bit early. So Christmas Eve is a night that families will always have dinner together. And now I remember this as just being the worst time, right, for Christmas, because the dish to cook this night is skatefish. Which smells really bad when it's being cooked. So my memories was of me going back to Iceland was me and my dad used to sneak out and go for a burger because I didn't want to have anything to do with the skatefish that was being cooked. And you can smell it in the, when you're walking past chimneys, the smell coming out and everything. So that's what happens Christmas Eve. And I think the reason that it happens that night is because Christmas Eve itself is usually the big celebration day rather than Christmas Day. So Christmas Eve, usually people will finish work about midday. because Christmas Eve is a bank holiday. And Christmas, the night, obviously Christmas Eve is when everybody sort of drives around and delivers presents to each other. And you visit, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of bustling and people coming and going. I mean, I've got more than 20 cousins, so I've got, you know, memories of people sort of flooding the house and then suddenly disappearing and then more people coming, and then everything quietens down nicely after the dinner, and all the presents are suddenly under the tree, because I think it may be in this country presents gradually come under the tree or something like that, but for Iceland it's like suddenly on that night, that's when they all appear. I know that things happen a bit differently in other places. But then Christmas Eve, traditionally it's a big clear up day. Everybody is tidying, cleaning, everyone's got their jobs to do. But you'll kind of stay at home. You don't go and visit many people or anything like that. And then Christmas dinner is in the evening. Usually lamb or ptarmigan as well. There's other families do that. In my family, it was always lamb with jam, with my grandmother's rhubarb jam specifically. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was lovely. And, my aunt now still makes that jam to that recipe, and every year I'm thinking, am I going to get a jar? Because it's my thing I look forward to. And then we open presents in the evening, and I've always really liked that, actually, because I got time to sort of, you know, really appreciate all the presents and everything, and I wasn't sort of getting hungry or overtired. And I've used that tradition with my own children now. We always open presents Christmas Eve evening, because I think it's a bit more relaxed, and then they just wake up in the Christmas morning and they just have the whole day in their pajamas playing. So yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. So were there any celebrations that would go on between sort of Christmas and New Year?
Not necessarily. I think it's actually, that's when it becomes quite relaxed, because I think that the run up to Christmas is just so kind of hectic. There's always lots of sort of get-togethers and things like that. And in Iceland, and I don't know if you've heard of what we call the book flood, the bókaflóð, which is, it's become a sort of modern tradition in Iceland to give each other books on Christmas Eve, particularly for adults giving adults presents. It's always a book, and there's kind of like a general idea now that everyone's just at home reading and being quite cozy and sort of, you know, obviously because it's a little bit cold in Iceland. Not many people sort of going out and things, so it's a nice excuse to be quite cozy. But on the subject of presents, another tradition is that all Icelandic children should have new clothes for Christmas. And the reason for it is because Grilla, the horrible bogeyman that we've got, she has a pet cat, who is called, well, the Christmas cat, the jólaköttur, and she will eat children that don't have new clothes. So that's a nice sort of scary kind of another scary tale from Grilla there. But that's why Icelandic children should always have new clothes at Christmas.
Oh wow, thank you. It sounds sort of like a very blissful time of year, very family oriented. Quite snug and cozy. So could you tell us a little bit about Iceland at that time of year? What sort of temperatures are normal, what the weather's like?
Yeah, I mean, I think people probably imagine it to be quite snowy. Unfortunately, it hasn't really been very snowy the last few years. It doesn't tend to get snowy in Iceland until about January, February. But sometimes we can have the Northern Lights, which is quite nice. Now, for the Northern Lights to come up, it's around about November time, really, that there's the best time for them, or perhaps February, because you need to have a kind of frosty ground and a clear sky. So that kind of weather is perfect to see the Northern Lights. It does rain quite a lot in Iceland, and I've you know, everyone that asks me about Iceland, I always say, oh, you should definitely go, it's a wonderful, wonderful place, and they always tell me how much it rained when they were there. So perhaps I'm just used to it always raining, but yeah. It is quite nice and relaxed. It tends to be just sort of the kind of weather that makes you want to stay at home, but actually all of that sort of literally explodes when it comes to New Year's Eve, because New Year's Eve is the exact opposite in Iceland. It's much noisier. We've got a tradition of having a lot of fireworks on New Year's Eve, and traditionally speaking, we don't have fireworks any other time of the year, but we sell them. They are sold by the rescue workers charity. So all of our mountain rescue team and anybody like that in works in those areas are all volunteers. We don't have any kind of state provided rescue service, which is a really kind of contentious subject because they are very, very needed with our landscape and things like that. So they sell them every year to raise funds, and that's kind of, it's enough to fund them for the full year. It's how many people buy fireworks, and the whole sky across Reykjavik is just completely lit up, and there's, you know, smoke in the air, and everybody's having a wonderful time. There's a debate every year about how ethical it is, because dog ownership is actually becoming a lot more popular in Iceland. It never used to be, actually, but it's becoming really popular. So of course they're not very happy about the, you know, really intense fireworks for that one night. So yeah, but it all, the coziness, it literally explodes by New Year's Eve.
One of the UK traditions are the 12 days of Christmas that start on Christmas Day. So when does the Christmas celebrations wind down in Iceland? You know, when do people take down their Christmas trees or Christmas decorations?
I think in the homes they take them down quite quickly. There's not really sort of a set date, or it depends sort of how sort of you know, religious orientated you are in the house. I mean, most people in Iceland come from a Lutheran background. I wouldn't say it's particularly devout these days, but that's sort of where they come from. So the in-house decorations tend to be a little bit more muted. But I think because we have such long nights over the winter time, in general, it's a very lit up time to visit Iceland, but from about November probably to February. So the actual Christmas lights, they tend to last a lot longer on the outside. One of my favourite things about how they decorate for Iceland and in Christmas time is actually graveyards. And you drive past graveyards and they are meticulously tended, and everyone will have lights over all the gravestones, around the trees. And it's probably one of the most beautiful things to see when you're driving past a really cold, dark Icelandic afternoon, not even in the middle of the night, but yeah, it's all lit up and looks really colourful and inviting and pretty and very, very lovely. So they do make an effort to sort of light it all up.
Did you have very long nights at that time of year, don't you?
Yes, yeah, you do. I mean, it's right in the absolute depths of winter. It doesn't really get light until about sort of 10, 11 in the morning, and then by 4 o'clock in the afternoon it's dark again. So we do have to do everything we can to sort of rejuvenate the environment a little bit.
I went to Iceland. I've been to Iceland several times, but the first time I ever went was in January, and seeing those graveyards lit up with all of those lights was so beautiful. And I thought that was such a lovely tradition.
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's one of the nicest things that you know, about the winter time.
Well, thank you, Edda, for sharing your memories with us and telling us about those wonderful traditions. I'm sure that people are going to really enjoy hearing about this. So thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your stories with us.